Shut up and sit down.
It's where the big boys play. SICW.
Welcome to Square Ring Podcast, everybody. Episode number 90. We're getting a little long in the tooth.
90, man. That's great. I mean, I know other podcasts that have many more episodes and not the same amount of followers. So speaking of followers or subscribers, thank you guys for subscribing to the channel, because we definitely, with like just a few short weeks, have jumped so much. And I like to think it's not about the heels, because the heels took over last week. But I just appreciate you guys liking what we're putting out there. We're driven by the SICW promotion, but we tackle other subjects, whether it be WWE or TNA or AEW. So we try to catch it all for wrestling, but we also throw in some other things. Like we talked about the Mike Tyson match the other day, or boxing match, or whatever is like the hot topic that's going around. But either way, you seem to like what you're hearing, so much appreciated. And if you guys can keep liking and sharing and telling everyone about it, we'd be much in debt to you.
Go out there and tell everybody about the two grizzly bears that are on here, and one of the grizzly bears got himself on a bear trap and is not here tonight.
Well, Bobby is very busy. He's got 3 boys that are into everything, and then he's taken on another coaching job. So he's helped coaching Belleville East in wrestling, and of course he's part of the Little Devils that coaches the little guys. So he has got his hands full tonight. So right now it's just Nate over there and Big Texan over here. We'll hopefully got some interesting stuff to talk about tonight. So we'll see how it goes.
You're going to say we do. We have some interesting stuff all put together by the Texan over there. But first, we want to get into the future of the podcast, because we hit a milestone that we were pushing for by the end of this year. Thank you to you guys. We're old school. We don't care about censorship, wokeism, and any of that added BS. We're not PC. We tell it like it is, and if you don't like it, you can hit the button, you can mute it, you can go somewhere else. It's not something we keep, doesn't keep us up at night. Even for me coming from California, it doesn't keep me up. So now that we can do memberships, what we have talked about and decided that, because in the past, Jim, we talked about doing movie reactions to wrestling movies and movies that professional independent wrestlers have been in. Kind of like you, we put out that trailer for that movie you were in. It was a long time ago too, that trailer. I mean, that was the first month or so that we were on that I found it and put it out.
Yes. So it wasn't really a movie; it was a documentary on me. And
no, I'm talking about that science fiction one, not your documentary, the science fiction one.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, that particular one really hasn't. I guess as they say in the movie business, wasn't picked up. There was some talks earlier this year that it was moving from like a TV show to a movie, and then I heard it different where it was going back to a TV show. So you never know. The trailer was out there for a while. They were trying to pick up some momentum. But it's an independent film. Well, at least it started out as an independent film. So those independents, they need a lot of backing to make it happen. Kind of like a crowd fund, as people do it nowadays. But so I guess it just didn't get enough backing in it to let it go somewhere. But yeah,
it was a good one. That's a shame, but
yeah.
So what we're planning is we're going to be doing those movie reactions with pro wrestlers and independent pro wrestlers. I'm going to put it on a first tier membership page, and it's going to be edited to correspond to copyright law, but it will not be censored. That's why we're putting it in the membership, because if we don't, we'll have to cut out all the blood, the violence, the cursing,
all the good stuff.
Everything that makes it good to watch. And we'll have to be PG-13. And if people have watched us for even a couple times, they know we're not. And we just don't want to be disingenuous to who we are as a podcast, as a wrestling organization, and as people. So our Patreon we still have, except we haven't opened it. And the full length raw videos will go there if you want to do that. After that, a second tier for when we get more established with more on there is going to be more focused towards Jim's other things that he does as a trainer for the Bob Orton Space Academy, which will be a training tier where you'll have access to whatever we put in the first tier, but then access to the second tier where Jim, Attila, Tito Santana, whoever, and Cowboy Bob Orton, whoever is coming in to do the training, you guys will have access to that, unlimited access. And also, the top tier is you'll be able to ask questions from Jim directly during live events that we'll have through either Discord or just live on here. And you'll get that priority access to the trainers and Jim. And, well, I don't train anybody, so you won't get access to me. Not in that way. So anyway, that's the state on what we're in. And then we're also going to be doing other things that are just we found interesting that we want to do, like the TV show with one of Bobby's friends going out to the haunted graveyard just to have some fun and do that. And then Jim has also a friend that has a TV show of going out and eating. And I really, really want to see Jim and Bobby go out there and see if they can out-eat this man.
It's not that we could out-eat this man. It's the bizarre stuff that this man eats. Yeah, because they do all that weird stuff like, like eyeballs and testicles and hot food and, stuff that normal people just stays away from. So we'll see if we can't catch up with him in the next few weeks or so and possibly get that going as well.
Yep, and those will be a mixture of, depending what's on it, membership and just putting it out there. But that's the future and the plan for the Squared Ring. And again, we just want to thank everybody for your subscriptions and your watching. We aimed for 500 by the end, and you guys killed it and nailed it. And we couldn't be more thankful, and we appreciate it. We're still going to do it no matter what because we enjoy it, and it's just what we're going to do.
Right. So let's move on to the meat and potatoes of tonight's episode. It's I wouldn't say it's based on second chances, but most of these people that we're talking about either had been fired from one organization and was able to move on to other organizations and do well, but come back and either kill it or just the second chance at that organization just didn't go well for them. Because we're going to circle back to something that happened over this weekend that I'll give you some info, Nate, and we can weigh on it to see if it's going to be good or bad. But we'll see. The world is full of second chances. I think everyone deserves a second chance. Just going through it. You threw up Hulk Hogan to start off the thing. So let's talk about Hulk Hogan. Now, details might not have them all down, but, Hulk Hogan, he was the guy who pretty much helped Vince McMahon bring wrestling to the forefront. Back then it was all territories until Vince McMahon got a hold of Hulk Hogan, and then they just blew up. And Hulk Hogan, went through some trials and tribulations with Vince McMahon, There was one part that came up that McMahon was going on trial for steroids, where they said that he was distributing them to his wrestlers. But at the same time, they were trying to switch from Hogan carrying the company to other people carrying the company. Kind of like McMahon was saying, Hogan's a little too old, been on top too long, kind of stale. Let's move on with new people. So I wouldn't say Hogan got fired. I would say that it probably was a mutual thing because Hogan at the time had those films coming out, had the Thunder in Paradise TV show coming out, which was taking him away from the wrestling ring. So Hogan left, was doing Thunder at Paradise. Vince McMahon went on and did the steroid trial. He got acquitted from all that, so McMahon was good. But Hogan wasn't really planning on coming back into professional wrestling. That's until Eric Bischoff was taking the reins of WCW and really wanted Hulk Hogan. So Hogan came in. It was pretty good at the beginning. Everyone was thrilled to see Hogan. But again, he kind of got a little stale, a little been in wrestling too long, never changing his ways, always saying your prayers, taking your vitamins, always red and yellow, until they got an idea about bringing in a couple other people who we've got labeled on here coming up. But let's just say Hogan switched and became this heel, and a great heel, and he became part of the NWO. Now, NWO went well for 83 weeks is what they always say, that Eric Bischoff took on Vince McMahon and beat him. But, of course, after the 83 weeks, it kind of went downhill, leading to WCW pretty much folding up and McMahon buying WCW. Of course, what he bought was just the people under contract for WCW, but people like Hogan was under contract through the parent company, which is escaping my mind right now, but Ted Turner. Ted Turner had a personal contract with Hogan and a few other guys that pretty much made them not want to come over to the WWF. So after WCW folded and they did the invasion, where it was WCW versus WWE guys, after that didn't work out, McMahon brought in the NWO. So Hogan's second chance, basically coming back into the WWE. Now, I say on this topic, some people had a success when it came back, some people didn't. Hogan had a success, and it was a fluke because this match right here, it was Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hogan versus The Rock. Now, if you go to Peacock, which we're not affiliated with, but if you go there, they have the behind the scenes stuff about this particular match, because Hogan was the heel in this match and The Rock was the good guy, the baby face, and this was supposed to be a passing of the torch match. However, the fans in attendance turned this match upside down, and it's very rare and not often at all the fans can get into a match so much that they change the outcome, whether they knew it or not. So in this match, the fans just went crazy for Hulk Hogan. He had been back a couple weeks. They were kind of doing their whole little NWO stuff where they, badmouth other wrestlers, they interfere. But this was the match that was supposed to be pretty much passing the torch. And I guess you could say it did, but it really spiked in Hogan's favor because mid-match, they switched everything up. All of a sudden, Hogan had to be the baby because the fans were cheering every single thing that he did. And then The Rock ended up breaking his character and going straight into heel, and doing. When I say heel and babyface, the baby does the baby follows the rules, and the heel breaks those rules. And so they literally switched up in this match, and Hogan went on to work a few more years in the WWE because of this match, because the fans just wanted Hulk Hogan back so bad. And it didn't do bad for The Rock either, because the passing of the torch did go on. It was icon versus icon, basically. And of course, look at The Rock now. He's a movie star, even with a couple bad movies. We talked about his Christmas movie that he just debuted and was
He's box
already
office
on.
explosion.
And I told you I was going to watch that movie, and we did. Um, it was a very weird Christmas movie, and I can tell why it didn't do well in the theaters. Because when you think Christmas movies, you think wholesome Christmas movies, good Christmas themes. Well, this was a very weird Christmas movie, so I can see why it only stayed in the theaters like 3, maybe 4 weeks, and then it went straight to video on demand on the streaming service. But yeah, so this was a very good second chance for Hulk Hogan. Vince McMahon always talked about people that he let me pause here. Nate, is your screen's going back and coming back on?
You keep freezing, but everything else is good.
Okay, well then I'm going to keep talking through it because my screens are going black and then eventually coming back on. But as long as you can hear me.
I can hear you. And for everybody watching, we do have thunderstorms in the area, so
yeah. So
we'll put it in. We'll push through as long as you can see the grizzly bear. We're good.
So so this is a very good second coming of the Hulk Hogan. Like I said, Vince McMahon always talked about how if he can make money off of bringing someone back that the fans want to bring back, he'll do it, regardless if you sued him, regardless if you held him up for a shit ton of money or whatever it be, or you just like if you're like Nails, the wrestler Nails, punched him out, and he fired him. He never did bring Nails back, but he definitely brought Hulk Hogan back, even though when they were going through that steroid trial, he really felt like Hogan betrayed him. And you can research that if you want, but he did come back, and he's been back.
I don't think Hogan betrayed him because McMahon did supply drugs allegedly, so you can't come back and sue us. But we know.
I'm not going to say that. I don't know for sure, but I do know that there was always one doctor in the house, and that doctor is the one that ended up, getting caught up by the FBI and stuff, and he was the one that pretty much let loose, because once the FBI had all the files of all the wrestlers that he worked with, it was kind of downhill from there. But according to what I review, Hogan did a great job when he came back, and it let him, he still pumps in to this day, and I think he owes it to the fans, because this particular match really helped extend his wrestling career. Who you got up next?
His face looked like a lemur. I always said he looked like a lemur. His lemur paint job on his face.
I'm still seeing Hogan and The Rock. Is it Ultimate Warrior?
That's the same one with his lemur. Okay, let's see what else. Yeah, this is That one too. He had, you can see his lemur paint job there too.
Oh, you're talking about the whole black here on the sides?
Yeah, the black and blonde dye jobs.
Yeah.
I didn't dislike it. I just thought it looked like a lemur. Baby
Yeah,
lemur on his face.
I guess he didn't want to get rid of his, the mustache and the goatee, but he still wanted to look heelish, so he went ahead and dyed that rust black. It
Well,
was
yeah.
not a great look for him,
No, but
um, but it worked. All right, flip to the next guy.
who do you want for the next guy?
Don't matter.
All right, let's see here. Yeah, let's go with Mamba Jamba here. Okay, where are we at? There we are.
Ah, okay. So this is a picture of Diesel. Now, Diesel was in the same boat as Hogan. Diesel, though, was pretty much at the top of the game when he left WWF. Now, he was the champion, but his contract was expiring. And thanks to Scott Hall, who got a great deal by Eric Bischoff to come to WCW, he was able to convince his friend Diesel / Kevin Nash to join him. So Kevin Nash, put in his 2 weeks or whatever they do, and he goes and joins Scott Hall in WCW. And they start this wonderful gimmick called the Outsiders, which turned basically into the NWO. It was originally just those two, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, using their real names. And then Hulk Hogan joined them, and he's the one that first said the New World Order in a promo, and that's what it turned to the NWO. But again, we're talking about second chances here, or second times into the business. And after, again, WCW folded, he set out because he had a personal contract with Ted Turner. So he was getting paid for sitting out, not wrestling. But when Vince McMahon wanted to bring the NWO into the WWE, him, Hogan, and Scott Hall were the three that he called. Now, so when Kevin Nash came back, it was a little, his body wasn't up to par, I guess you would say, because they were doing the skits where, like I said, they were calling other wrestlers' name behind the scenes, jumping people, interrupting matches. However, he was prone for hurting himself. He went through a quad tear. I think it was a quad that got torn, which put him back on the shelf. And then he, healed from that injury, come back in, and he was wrestling this spot with him and Triple H and CM Punk, and got hurt again. And then that was the end of pretty much his wrestling up in WWE. So his second chance coming back into the WWE really did not help. His heyday was back in WCW when he was part of the Outsiders and part of the NWO. So second chance wise, or second time into the company, it wasn't a good one. So I'm going to say that wasn't a positive comeback. Hopefully you got Scott Hall next, so I can just keep this theme going. Because Scott Hall was Razor Ramon in the
let me get Scott. Here we go. I say I have him one down from him, so.
There we go. So Scott Hall. Again, he was a mid-carder in the WWF/WWE. He never made it to the champion, but he had a hell of an intercontinental match with Shawn Michaels. But again, his contract was, I think he was actually working on a day-to-day because I think his contract expired. But he was tired of not making the big guy money. And he was also tired of working all the dates because in the WWF/WWE, they were still on 300 plus dates a year. And he talks about wanting to spend more time with his family, just like Kevin Nash. He wanted more time with his family, and that was a big push for them to go to WCW. Because I think Eric only offered him 170 dates with so much more money compared to the WWE. So he was getting more money and less dates, which is totally a win-win.
Yep.
So again, part of the Outsiders made a big splash in WCW. NWO went crazy. However, I think towards the end of NWO or WCW, he was kind of on the sauce, as they say. He had a lot of inner demons. Now, he still had that personal contract with Time Warner. So he was getting paid just to sit out as well. But when he went back into the WWF/WWE, part of that NWO skit, like I was just talking about Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan and Scott Hall, it really didn't do good for him either, because he wasn't clean, he wasn't sober, so he didn't last too long. And according to my research, I think he was only a couple months after coming in that they released him, because he wasn't reliable and he was still on the sauce. However, I think I actually wrote it down. So he left in '96 to go to WCW. Back in 2002 is when Scott Hall came back to the WWE. Again, they let him go because he was his personal demons. But he ran into DDP, which is Diamond Dallas Page, and Diamond is known for helping. If you have drug problems or if you're abusing the bottle, he helps you get out of that situation. He's helped people with mobility by doing his DDP yoga, which, if you go onto his channel, DDP's channel, he just helped Butterbean. He was a pro boxer, and he got to the point where Butterbean was walking with a walker, sometimes using a wheelchair. And DDP just turned that guy's life around as well. Also, Jake the Snake Roberts, because Jake was using, and I love Jake to death. I met him a couple times, and he's a great guy. But he's clean and sober. But anyway, DDP helped Scott Hall take back his life. And in 2014, because he was clean and sober, they invited him into the WWE Hall of Fame. So total, turn of fate, but he was able to get clean and sober, able to get inducted into the Hall of Fame. But his second time into the WWE, and that's what I'm looking at, was not a good time for him. He just pretty much hurt his career. Now you have Shawn Michaels on here. And the reason why I wanted to talk about Shawn Michaels is, his history is pretty much the same as Razor Ramon or Scott Hall. He was under the influence a lot. A lot of people hated him backstage, but they couldn't deny his star power. I mean, they called him Mr. WrestleMania for a reason. He was the greatest. And you can hear the interviews with The Undertaker, and The Undertaker says that personally he hated Shawn Michaels, but he wanted to work with Shawn Michaels as much as he can, because in the ring, he was going to make you look great and make himself look great at the same time, and you're both going to benefit from it. So, Mr. Heartbreak Kid, that's the famous Shawn Michaels look there. He went through a couple stages of retirement and coming back, but he wasn't doing better for himself. He was still under the influence. He was still fucking off. And then, he I have to say, he did take the heat for Bret Hart. He took the heat for Vince McMahon when Vince McMahon screwed Bret, when Bret was the WWE champion, but was leaving for WCW. They kind of did the whole screw job is what Montreal screw job is what they call it. But I have him on this list just because when he retired eventually and went away from wrestling, he got married, had a kid, and found God, I would say, found religion. And he eventually came back into wrestling. And then everyone loved him. They loved him behind the scenes. They loved him still in the ring. He was still going. And it was just like a better version of Shawn Michaels. And that's, you can talk to the wrestlers then, because the Undertaker said once he came back and he was clean, and you can tell that he was clean and found religion, that he had changed his life, that everyone just adored him and loved him. So his comeback was a very positive one. And he stretched that out until he officially retired. He did come back once for a Saudi Arabia match because they were paying him millions. We talked about that, where they paid him a couple million for him to come out of retirement, even though his return match was bad because Triple H immediately got hurt. I think King got hurt too, and then Undertaker was at the end of his career, so the whole match just kind of didn't go well. But
wasn't it concussions that match?
No, I think Triple H had torn his pec, torn something, and so he really couldn't do much, and so Shawn had to pretty much be that whole team, and he had to take on the Undertaker and Kane and take the heat, and yeah, it was just a crazy match. You knew something was wrong. It was obviously that Triple H was seriously hurt. But as a comeback match, it wasn't the best one. But it wasn't really his fault. But Shawn Michaels is still involved in the wrestling. Matter of fact, he is pretty much taken control over the NXT brand. He does everything. He's the behind-the-scenes guy. He runs the dailies of the NXT. So, again, his comeback is a positive one. It prolonged his career, and his career is still going. So this is Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson, whatever you want to call him, because in WWE, this is when he was in, before it was NXT as a TV show, it was NXT for a clique or a group of people. And this was the group. Bryan was part of it. It was like 5 or 6 people. Their group was called NXT, which was basically, we are new and we're next to take over, basically how they are going with it.
Yeah,
and
next to take over. For NXT next is just what they were saying.
Nexus, I think, is what they are called, honestly. But yeah. So Daniel Bryan was kind of like the weird one in that group, but he was told to be extra aggressive one night, and they were told to go down to the ring and just destroy everything. And they destroyed everyone who came out. They destroyed the ring. They destroyed where the commentators sit. But the ring announcer was out there, and Bryan Danielson grabbed him and was choking him with his own tie. So he was choking him with his tie and literally got fired. They fired him, but a few weeks went by, but the fans were behind him. Again, this is where the fans get involved. And the fans get behind him, and they actually give him a second chance, and they hire him back. They fired him because they felt that he was too strong, or went too far and beyond of tearing things up, and it was actually creating a physical situation with that ring announcer. And even that ring announcer didn't know what the hell was going on, so it kind of spooked him, and that's the reason why he got fired. But like I said, the fans got behind him. They rehired him, and then he blew up. I mean, there was a whole, they call it the Yes Movement in WWE because, and even at the time, like Triple H was against him. All the McMahons was against him because he is short. He's just a little bit taller than you, Nate. But he knew how to work. And that's why the fans loved him because he knew how to work. But the McMahons, they tell you all the time that they just pictured him as a mid-carder, someone they can throw out there and he would have a good match, but they never assumed that he would just take off. However, the fans got behind him and they chanted every time he came out. They would go up like this as yes, yes, yes. And that propelled him into the main events. And that propelled him into winning championships. And he was the top guy for a few years. So his second chance made him. Because if he would have got fired and went somewhere else, because he was a wrestler before WWE. He was in Ring of Honor. He was a champion there. He was going on to independence in wrestling. So if he would have moved on to anywhere else, I don't think it would have worked. But when he got the fans behind him, he just went to the moon. And, he spun off and did the Total Divas TV show. He didn't have to retire because he got too many concussions from his work because he was a very strong style of a wrestler. And then eventually he asked for his release and he went over to AEW and he worked there for a few years. He just now retired again because the injuries are, coming back. And he didn't have another concussion.
Guys our size, I'm not talking about grizzly bears like you and Kowalski. You get mountains out there. Concussions are a problem. I've had many.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see it.
Well, not even just because of your size. I've had a few concussions, so I know how it is. Not as bad as Daniel, but getting older, stuff that I would be able to rattle off pretty quickly, I have to sit back and think about for a few seconds before it comes back to me. But definitely his second chance that he got in the WWE paid off, and it was a very positive second chance. I love that guy. He is a great wrestler.
What
Who
about
else
this
we
one?
got? Sable. All
Yep.
right. So, she got hired because of her husband at the time, which was Mark Merrow. He brought her with him to his per se interview. He was, we talked about people going from the WWF to WCW. Well, Mark Merrow was the guy who went from WCW to the WWF or WWE, whatever time period it was. But he brought her with her. And then like Vincent McMahon and all the higher ups like went Google Gaga all over her. So they brought her too, hired her as well. And it ended up being, like a wife and husband type of duel. The only bad thing is Mark Merrow was not the best wrestler. And she got over better than he did. So eventually they split them up and she went on her own and became, just like in that picture, she became a women's champion. Eventually she married Brock Lesnar. But I think they were actually married when she up and quit. Now, it might be on the other hand, they might have fired her, but she says she quit, something like that. Not every termination is in concrete. But she ended up suing the WWE for, there was a couple things. It was, what's the term for sexual harassment? She was suing them over unsafe workplace. And eventually the WWE, caved and there was a settlement. Of course, it wasn't talked about, but I do know that she was asking for $110 million. Now, granted,
Yeah,
I don't think she got that,
no,
but
even whether you agree with her or not on what happened, because you and I both know some weird stuff happened behind the scenes, that's just, no, that's too much.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
yeah, she would enrich herself, but think of all the other people she would bankrupt and throw out of a job. To me, that's too far.
yeah.
Hundreds
Uh,
of other families because you hold a grudge. I get why she's holding a grudge, but no, you can't put everybody else at risk.
yeah.
That's my
So,
personal opinion.
like I said, she won. She got a settlement out of it. I'm sure it was in the millions, but I'm sure it wasn't close to 110. However, like I said, this podcast is about second chances coming back, and they brought her back. And this was after the settlement. She came back and worked another 2 years. And then it didn't really prolong her wrestling career coming back. Not 100% sure why she came back. Maybe it was because, she ended up marrying Brock Lesnar and he was like the big thing back then. Still is, even though we haven't heard much from him since the whole Vince McMahon scandal. Um, but I would say that this one is like not a positive, but not a negative either. Supposedly, after the 2 years, it might have been only a 2-year contract, so she decided that she wanted to spend more time with their family because she already brought in a kid from the Mark Merrill marriage. And I think she definitely has a kid with Brock Lesnar because if you've seen Brock Lesnar's daughter, she looks exactly like him, which is unfortunate.
You
I
said
would
it, not
say
me.
that. Yeah, please, Brock, don't beat
Every,
me up. But
yeah, I was gonna say
uh,
everybody expects me to say it, so it wouldn't be a shock. But this time it was you.
now she is an excellent wrestler, though. She's fallen under her daddy's footsteps, in high school and college, and evidently she's got a great record. It's just unfortunate she looks exactly like her dad, and in the female perspective, it does not look good on her. So again, I would say it's not a positive that she came back, but it's not a negative either. I would say it was more of a neutral. I don't know why she came back because she just won that money, but regardless, Vince McMahon thought he can draw more money with her being there, so he brought her back into the fold.
Well, he had to pay her at least 7 figures, so he had to make money somehow.
That's true. He had to make her money back. All right, so this is Chelsea Green. Now, I would say 2 days ago, today's Tuesday, 4 days ago, she was just in uh, WWE's last pay per view. Well, no, it wasn't a pay per view, it was Saturday night's main event. First time that they've done Saturday nights in years, probably since the 80s. So I would say that congratulations to her because she won the WWE United States Women's Championship. And we had talked about this new belt last week on the it was 2 weeks ago on the podcast
2 weeks
that the
ago.
WWE was coming out with the United States title for the women's division. Now, do they need another title? We both kind of agreed that really they didn't. It's not sure why they decided on it. I mean, I'm sure they got the reasons. And congratulations to her that she won it. She was a Canadian wrestler who worked a lot of places, did a lot of independence, Ring of Honor. She did TNA. She did the Mexico wrestling. But let me see. I got her down. In 2015, she was in Tough Enough, and that's where I remember her for the first time. So I liked the Tough Enough series because it, you know, it showed you the other style of training and how hard it is to be a wrestler and how to get started in the wrestling. So she didn't win Tough Enough. I think she came in the fourth place or something like that. So no contract for her. So she went back into the independents. She did a tour of Japan. She did a little bit more TNA and just roaming around. But in 2018, they signed her finally. And they signed her into NXT. And she was doing great in NXT, where they decided that they were going to bump her up and moved her to, I think it was Raw. But the bad thing about her is she was injury prone. So in NXT, she got injured, got sidelined for a few months, but came back, got injured again, come back. And then when she was about to move up, she actually injured her wrist. And then they just cut her, figuring that she was injury prone. She wasn't, going to have a long career. So they let her go. And she went back into the independents, back to TNA. She was knockouts champion for TNA. But eventually they brought her back not too long ago, back in 2023. So we're talking 2 years ago. They brought her back. Her character is like a little mischievous little double type of person, but her working and not getting injured. Like I said, this past weekend she was able to capture the United States Women's Champion, first United States Women's Champion. So her second chance, I would say, was great. She's a current player on the roster, so I think it was definitely a positive second chance for her.
I'm setting up for our next topic after this.
Oh, okay.
Our upcoming show.
All right. Should be one more person.
Yeah, let me. That would be no. We have the Ultimate Warrior.
Oh yeah. Okay, so the Ultimate Warrior. He was the next in line under Hulk Hogan. They did this great match. Ultimate Warrior was the Intercontinental Champion. Hulk Hogan was, of course, the Heavyweight Champion. First time ever, they put them both together, against each other. They were each individually were so popular. And like I said, Vincent McMahon was concerned that Hogan was a little stale, getting a little older. So he chose the Ultimate Warrior to be his replacement. And so they did the match, belt versus belt, basically. I guess technically the Ultimate Warrior could win the heavyweight championship, but Hogan was not going to win the Intercontinental, and if you go behind the scenes, Hogan talks about it, how, Ultimate Warrior couldn't wrestle. He was just there because he was popular with the fans. But I tell you what, the fans were wonders for Ultimate Warrior because he put that energy into his matches. He would run down to the ring. He would have those crazy scientific or science fiction type of promos that would you wouldn't know what he was talking about, but it would draw you in. And they skyrocketed him. He had a great physique. So he became the champion. And then as champion, that's when it kind of gets a little weird on his reign. He started asking for more money. He started wanting Hulk Hogan's money. And Hogan, had been on top for years. And the Ultimate Warrior was just now on top. But he said that he should be paid just as much as Hogan was getting paid. But he didn't really put in the dues that Hogan did for, the WWF at the time. And then there was a certain match where it was him, and I can't remember who else it was. But he kind of had Vince McMahon by the balls, because he said that he wouldn't go out unless Vince McMahon would cut him a check for $500,000 right there on the spot. And he did, and some people wanted to beat the Ultimate Warrior's ass because of it, because they're holding up the boss. You do your job, and then you talk to Vince backstage about the political stuff. But he fired him as soon as he came back. As soon as he came back into the locker room from the match, he cut him, and he told him he would never work here again. And they even did, back then they would do those home video releases, and WWF did a home video of the destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, and it was just nothing but what's the word when they do a whole bunch of videos? Compilation of videos that just made the Ultimate Warrior look like crap. And they interviewed a bunch of people, and they just dogged him through the whole time. Hulk Hogan was on that video, and he just dogged the Ultimate Warrior the whole time.
Yeah, and you know what? I watched it, and I didn't give a shit, because he was my favorite as a kid, and even all the stuff I know about him, and backstage in his personal life, he's still my favorite from back then. The only thing that eclipses it is Andre the Giant painting his face like the Ultimate Warrior to get Ultimate Giant. To me, that's the best. Which, Chris, you still owe me that damn picture.
I love the Ultimate Warrior too. I have a bunch of his action figures. I showed you one a couple weeks ago, the big Hasbro. So as much as people can dog him, he just brought a different energy into his matches, and made him noticed by all the fans. And as soon as the fans
as a hyperactive kid in the 80s, he was my spirit animal.
There you go.
That energy of running down to the ring. Yeah, I ran everywhere.
Yeah. Now, so again, McMahon talks about how if he thinks he can draw money with you, or if he thinks you would make the business better, he'll bring you back in. Now, he did not bring him back in for a career. He mended the fences with Vince McMahon and Triple H and everyone. And they brought him back in and gave him the Hall of Fame. And he went into the Hall of Fame in 2014. So they mended the fences. He came back in, and they talk about, they actually did, the Hall of Fame behind the scenes. And they showed him running into Hulk Hogan, and Hogan apologizing to him for that video. And he apologized for Hogan because the way they interacted. And, Jake the Snake talks about how the Ultimate Warrior came up to him, and he tried to avoid the Ultimate Warrior that night. But Ultimate Warrior searched for him and found him and wanted to make amends to Jake the Snake. So he... the whole night, his speech was great. Him and McMahon got back together. He was accepted into the WWE Hall of Fame. The next Monday, because this was WrestleMania weekend, which I think was either a Friday or Saturday that they did the Hall of Fame, and then WrestleMania was Sunday, and then Raw, of course, is every Monday. And he came out Monday, because normally after every WrestleMania, that following Monday, they'll bring out everyone who was inducted into the Hall of Fame. It's just another, take your bow. And they allowed him to have the mic. He went down to the ring. He gave an awesome speech. He wasn't, the one thing that caught me about the speech was he didn't have his paint on. He actually had a mask that he put on. But I figured it's just he was older now. He didn't feel like he needed to paint himself. But that night, they took him back to the airport, and on his way to his car or something like that, he had a heart attack and died. To me, this is a weird second chance. You never would have thought that he would have come back into the WWE. But like I said, they mended the fence. He came back, had a great weekend, was inducted into the Hall of Fame, gave a great speech the next Monday, and then sadly he passed away. But then they also, I hate to say that WWE like flicked a switch, but they kind of did, because then it was everything positive about the Ultimate Warrior. They took back the video and said that that was just us trying to slam him, but he's actually a great guy. And then they actually came out with an Ultimate Warrior award that they hand out at WrestleMania. And so I remember the first one who accepted the award was a kid who was dying from cancer. And Brian Danielson was the one that actually handed out the award, I think. And this kid had been fighting cancer all of his life, and he was only like 6 or 7, maybe 8, and he got that award. But sadly, he did pass away from his cancer as well. But in the comings of a comeback or a second chance, they dogged him so much after he left. But to bring him back into the fold and give him the spotlight again and give him his just due or his rewards, being inducted into the Hall of Fame, definitely a positive, definitely one that's going to be remembered. So his comeback, his second chance was very positive, I would say. But
Especially
now,
getting him and immediately dying.
right,
That's what
right.
I kept waiting for you to get to on when he died that night.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
funny,
yeah,
but I just kept waiting. Now,
yeah.
the last part of this segment.
This is the whole reason why I come up with this this whole podcast tonight was on second chances. This is Tessa Blanchard. This is Tully's daughter. Tully was one of the Four Horsemen. Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Ric Flair. Well, she worked her ass off. She was working for WWE. She did the NXT. She worked for Ring of Honor. She went down to Mexico as well. Went to TNA. Was doing all what she could do. The bad thing is she had like I'm better than this type of attitude about it all. Now,
She's a
don't get
big
me
player,
wrong.
dude.
Yeah, she was burning bridges everywhere she went, but she made it to TNA, or at this time TNA was called Impact, and I would like to say WWE is one way of type of wrestling, and then AEW is like the independence type of wrestling, just on a bigger scale. Because like WWE tells stories, independents are not really storytelling. They just want to have a great match with a great opponent, and then sometimes it gets sloppy, and then sometimes with no story driven, you don't care. And I think that's what AEW's problem is. But so I want to kind of throw that out there, because TNA was a mix. It had good storytelling because it had a lot of former WWE guys behind the scenes, creating the stories of what needed to happen, why it's happening. But then they got sold, and then they switched the name from TNA to Impact Wrestling. As we all know now, they switched the name back to TNA, but at this moment in time, they were called Impact. And she was the Knockouts Women's Champion. But something you'd normally only see in the independents is a guy versus a girl match. In WWE, it was always an intergender match where it was a guy and a girl versus a guy and a girl, and then the girls had to wrestle each other, the guys had to wrestle each other. But in the independents, you see a lot of girl versus guy matches. And in Impact, she ended up going for the men's world heavyweight championship belt. Now, this is where a lot of people say it should never happen. Some people it should because it's the new future of the wrestling business. But she won the world's championship. And it's never been done before, so she was the first of any organization to put a woman in the world heavyweight title or championship area. She was the champion. However, this was the same time that the Me Too movement was happening in the world, where men were getting outed. This was also the start of COVID. So you had that Me Too happening where a lot of male wrestlers, and some of them are still blackballed to this day. And some of them rightfully so.
Yeah, I was going to say some rightfully so, but some need to sue the people that accused them because they didn't do anything wrong. But the ones
Right.
that did should never wrestle or have any type of career again.
Yes. So when this was coming out, the Me Too movement, actually, they Me Too'd her. Some of the women start coming out and saying she was a bully behind the stage. Like I said, she was burning bridges everywhere she went. That's why she had to go everywhere, because she burnt the bridge eventually. But a lot of people like Jordan Grace don't like her. Chelsea Green, the girl that we talked about not too long ago, she was one of them, came out and said that she was a bully. There was another girl who was a black wrestler, and she said that she spit in her face and called her the N-word. So she pretty much got blasted, and COVID happened, so she was stuck in her house per se, and they asked her to come and to defend her belt, because I think she only defended it once. But she refused, and like with all the backstage politics against her, they stripped her of the title, and this was like it on Impact. They stripped her of the title and then sent her packing. They cut ties with her. And even after that happened and COVID went away, well, in theory, went away, and all the wrestling promotions started opening up and allowing people to travel and everything, she tried to go everywhere, but she couldn't because she burnt so many bridges. Her name was out there as being a bully. So she went back down to Mexico and started wrestling in Mexico again. And then she burnt that bridge. And then she became, what they call it, an RTC.
Yeah, and that's hard to do, to burn your bridge in Mexico. That's difficult to do.
So the reason behind this is this past Sunday, and so many years of not wrestling for Impact, Jordan Grace, who we talked about in previous episodes, that she is WWE bound because even though she works for TNA, WWE has been bringing her in and having her wrestle the women for WWE. And Jordan Grace is the women's champion for TNA. Well, this past weekend, she had a wrestling match, and it got interrupted by a person all in black and just beat her down. And then she took off like a ski mask and ended up being Tulsa Blanchard. And so now everyone who's been talking about it yesterday, Monday, talking about it today, is what is TNA thinking, giving her a second chance? And some famous wrestlers have come out, some legends have come out to defend her. Some have come out and said, what the fuck you thinking? Um, I'm trying to think of the wrestler that is defending her, and his name is skipping my mind. Booker T. Booker T came out and said, "Hey, everyone gets a second chance. You know, there's been so many years." Um, Evidently, she apologized to the people she needed to apologize to. She apologized to Jordan Grace. She apologized to that black wrestler that supposedly she spit on and called her the N-word. And there was actually a picture of them two together. So evidently, she has apologized to the people she needed to and the TNA management that they felt that they can bring her back in and make money with her. Otherwise, if they can't make money with you or shock the audience, they wouldn't have done it. So this whole episode I've been based on her is we should give her a second chance. People, I'm throwing my name in there too. Sometimes you say shit in your youth that you regret, or that now that you're older and smarter, you realize wasn't the best stuff to say, or you've done something in your past. Again, this is the second coming of her. She's a third generation wrestler because her dad being Tully, and I think Tully's dad was Joe. Joe, I want to say his name was Joe. I might be wrong about that, but he was a wrestler turned promoter, so he had his own promotion. And, then Tully came in and became a dominant wrestler, being part of the Four Horsemen. So she's got the lineage. She's already got a historic wrestling career, being the first woman's, world champion, So I think everyone should cut her some slack and give her a second chance and see what she can prove. And of course, she has to be able to prove it. Otherwise, we'll make another video and say that this run was a negative one.
I agree.
But,
now let's shift gears to next year. Mr. Herb Simmons has announced a whole plethora
I think
of
we're up
legends
to
coming
11,
to.
I think.
Yep, and I have every single one of them here. First one is the American Giant. He's coming in.
Yeah, so the American Giant, he's wrestled a few times. I don't think he's had a long wrestling career yet. I know he's wrestled for a place called RCW, and not the one that I used to wrestle for, which was Rampage Championship Wrestling. His is Redneck Championship Wrestling. So different RCW, but I know he's had at least a few matches there. But yeah, so he deserves the name the Giant because he is very tall. I don't know what his height is, but I have to look up to him.
I thought he was like 7'2" or 7'3", wasn't he?
I am not 100% sure. All I know is he's tall.
He is a tall boy. It looks like he has that glandular problem.
Yeah, he's definitely got that giantism.
Yep. All right, the next is Beer City Bruiser. He's been announced coming.
A lot of people might not recognize him or might not know him, but it's the same name. He's worked for the WWF. It wasn't quite the WWE at the time, but the WWF, he's worked for them. He was very popular in Missouri. And I think he moved down south and has been still doing dates. But he's coming back to Missouri. One, I think he wants to be in the Bruiser Battle Royal.
Yep.
But
he's going to be competing for the Brody Cup.
Yeah, so he is a big fan of Bruiser, like we all are. So he wants to get his shot at that. But like I said, he has a name, but he doesn't have a name. He's in that awkward stage that a lot of people know him, but a lot of people don't.
If you're in the Midwest, you know him. On the coast, probably not.
Right, I'll agree with that.
And we have Sabu.
Oh, Sabu, he the innovator of violence right there. So, ECW original. Him and RVD have had some great matches. He's worked everywhere: ECW, WWF, WWE. He's worked in TNA. Not too sure about AEW yet. I do know AEW had an ECW type of week or a month or something like that where they celebrated ECW. So he might have been invited there. He's always in Vegas for our Vegas trip, which celebrates.
Cauliflower Alley.
Huh?
Cauliflower Alley.
Yeah, Cauliflower Alley Club. He's always there. This is. I've been there, I think, 2 or 3 years, and he's been there every year. He's normally in the wrestling show too, out in Vegas. I know he's had a lot of health problems, so I think he's pretty much done wrestling. But we'd love him to have the Fan Fest.
And a couple of friends of our podcast, Teddy and Matt.
Mac Davis, yes. Mac Davis, the voice of SICW. He does all the special intros or videos. He's just got an awesome voice. And of course, you can't go wrong with Teddy Long. You know, he's been everywhere: NWA, WCW, WWE. You know, he's done it all. So he came last year. He was had everyone dancing on the. He was on stage with. Another gentleman, and they had him all doing his dance, his little shuffle that he always does when he was in WWE.
He did that during Bill Abner, right? He was
Bill
up on
Abner.
stage with Bill Abner.
Yep.
But I always have fun with Teddy. He's funny. Mac, him and I hang out, but he's always fun as hell to hang out with. He has a personality like mine, very dark, dark humor.
Right.
And Chris coming back, or AKA Sonny.
Yes. So a lot of people confuse the name. They think of the other Sunny in WWF at the time. But she is a Glow Girl, and I think she actually heads up a bunch of Glow Girls where they'll go around and tour as a group to different fan fests and stuff. She also is a member of the Cauliflower Alley Club, so she's always a welcome guest. And yes, like you said, she's coming back.
And the last Fan Fest, guess who was her bodyguard? The Spawn of Kong.
Oh.
Was her bodyguard at the last Fan Fest, so I expect her to be there being her bodyguard too. And of course, we have Nikita. We talked about him last week. No, not last week, the week before, because it was the heel takeover last week.
I want to just cut for a second. Glenn and Kowalski said it was going to be the most popular podcast because they're on it. I would like to tell them yes and no. It was a very popular podcast. We probably got some subscribers out of it. However, he is tied with Herb Simmons on the views. I've looked at that the last couple days because I wanted to make sure that, one, they weren't the very popular podcast version of our show, because I do not want that to happen. And I'm so glad that our podcast with Herb Simmons is tied with them, even though the podcast with Herb Simmons is like probably 3 weeks old. So,
but here's what's funny is one of our first podcasts is still our highest rated, and that is with a very good friend of ours, James Beard, during the club. That's still the top rated, still getting views even to this day. So yeah, he has a long way to go. After that is our podcast with for the battle for SICW. That one has 247, I believe, at this point.
That's just music to my ears. That just means that Glenn and Kowalski coming in, yes, they might have a little effect on the podcast, but they still have to earn the best podcast, version. So that's good. That's music to my ears. But I do want to say, side note, James Beard, when he was on, he was talking about his wrestling territory that he belongs to. that's trying to make a name for themselves. They have the hard-hitting style. Well, they just became one of the territories for the NWA. So yeah, so it's kind of nice. NWA is kind of fluctuating right now. Because they still don't have like a TV deal or anything like that that's gonna make them into a main, competition for an AEW or WWE. But they're still growing, and they just took on the Texas territory. So, congratulations, Mr. James Beard.
Yeah, congrats. And I mean, if he wants to get a TV deal, he's going to have to come to us, and we can get him one for the Midwest. We already talked about Nikita, so we'll move on from him down to Ox.
Ox Baker. So his family is going to be there. He is actually not going to, but he is being inducted into the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. So that's why we are celebrating him. His family is going to be there to receive the plaque and the dedication to him. And they want to tell his story. So they'll be there. Not necessarily that you want their autograph or anything like that, but just to listen to the stories of Ox Baker. So it's going to be a great to meet them as well.
Well, I'm going to ask the family if they can tell the one I know that you can't say on TV.
There's probably a lot of those.
There's one in particular that I like that I want them to tell, but I doubt they're going to do it because, family friendly. Herblight's family friendly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And a guy that we always have fun with, Greg the Hammer Valentine's coming back.
Yeah, Greg the Hammer. He was known for just getting started 15 minutes into the match. They always say that he didn't loosen up until 15 minutes into the match. He was actually my first legend that I wrestled. And I tell the story all the time about, we were both good guys at the time. So it was a mutual thing. I went up to him being the veteran, asking him what he would like to do in the match. And we threw some ideas back and forth, how we were going to have this great competitive match and the style that we were going to do and everything. And then when we got into the ring, it went all out the window, and he did whatever the fuck he wanted. And I love him for it, too, because it made me learn that day that you should just feel it out in the ring. The matches look better when it's just, free flowing. And that's something I preach to this day. With all the new guys and how they want to do spot after spot after spot. But it's always better just to let the magic happen.
Yep. Bugsy McGraw.
All right, Bugsy McGraw. So he was a great wrestler back in the day, and I believe he's still alive. So I think it's him that's actually coming in. So it'll be great. Great to meet him and see how life has treated him.
Yeah, I've never met Bugsy, so it'll be interesting. Butch Reed's going into the Hall of Fame this year.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Butch is another one that we lost. Recently, I just posted a picture of me and Butch. The last match that he had, I was there for, got to watch it. I was on the same card. And so we got to talking in the back, and I got a picture with him. And it was something I'll treasure because not too long after that, we actually lost him. So very sad, but at least he's being honored, and his family's going to be there to accept everything. So great. And I'll throw that out there that he is part of my favorite tag team, which I based my tag team when it was me and Waco. We wore the hoods because they wore hoods, and they were part of a tag team called Doom. And it was a great tag team that I really liked.
But I just thought you made Waco wear a face mask because he's so damn ugly.
Well, that too. And it makes sense because I'm not ugly, but I still wore one just to make Waco feel an equal partner.
Yeah. Well, Waco's going to watch this. Come at me. Come on. We have Missy Hyatt coming back.
Oh, well, not really coming back. This is going to be her first time. She was supposed to be there last year, but something happened, and she
Oh,
had to reschedule.
she didn't
Yeah,
show up, huh? It
no, she was not there.
shows how busy I was with TV. I didn't even notice. I know she was supposed to be there.
Yeah, she was supposed to be there, but something happened. She had to rearrange it, and so now she's going to be here. Now, when you think women of wrestling, you always come to like Miss Elizabeth. Because WWE or WWF back then was the most popular wrestling show. But down south, Missy Hyatt was the first woman of wrestling. She was a manager of multiple tag teams, multiple superstars, multiple champions. So it'd be great to have her in there.
And I wasn't throwing shade in case anybody is watching this far. And it's just we had Randy Orton, and it was all about me trying to get everything, getting the okay from WWE and Randy saying, I don't care what they say, just do it anyway.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't notice.
Mhm.
No shade. Bill Hafner, he's coming back as always, a very funny man.
Yeah, so last year he did his comedy stick that he does. He does like a one-man show. This year he's going to be a host, and he's going to host a Q&A, which I think is the best part of FanFest. Last year we really didn't have a Q&A session unless you're a guest on his show, because he did have like Teddy Long, and he did have some other guys that he, like Medusa, he brought her up on stage, and you can ask some questions then, but it wasn't like a Q&A session. So this is going to be more of a storytelling, the road trips that they had to take, and it's going to be the legends that are coming in that's going to be on this stage. So they really haven't announced which ones are participating in it. However, that's the best part of FanFest. Figure it on a bigger stage, because when you get to meet the legend, sometimes you can tell them what they meant to you, and they might tell you something, but it's normally short and sweet, and thank you, here's your autograph, send you on your way. Well, this is a time where you can ask those deep, drawn out questions and hopefully get the answers or the stories that make them so great. So.
And it's the stories. I mean, you learn so much, even behind the scenes. Documentaries, you're not going to hear the juicy stories.
Yes. And, I was in Iowa for a fan fest. Well, it wasn't a fan fest, it was the Hall of Fame. And I was in a group of legends at the table that we were eating at. And they were telling stories, we were listening, and someone, I think, wanted to tape the stories that were being said, and they're like, no, this is stories that we don't want out there. And so, there is stories that most people keep to themselves or don't want it. They don't want to be part of the Me Too establishment again. Some of these stories back in the day, it's a different time, different era. Shit happened back then, and they don't want it plastered all over the place.
And we have Gangrel. We talked about him a couple weeks ago, and one of our favorites, a very good friend of all of ours, Tito, is coming back.
Yeah, Tito, he was just at the Saturday night's main event. He was in the audience. They showed him off. Him and Jimmy Hart was there. Greg the Hammer Valentine was there, and so was Coco Beware. So they were some of the legends that they brought in there to kind of showcase, because they were the legends that wrestled, originally on the Saturday night's main event. So that's kind of cool. So Tito is actually getting out there, getting more involved in FanFest now, and getting more involved into the wrestling scene. Not that he's going to wrestle, but it's just great. He had all the boys in our locker room the first time he showed up. We were all gathered. It was like a big old circle, and we were just asking questions, and he was just he wasn't holding back. He let us know all. He answered everything that we asked of him. He was a great guy. So yeah, definitely welcome to have Tito back.
Rock and Roll Express.
So the Rock and Roll Express. Now they too were supposed to be here last year, but when they took the booking to come to FanFest, the NWA didn't have anything going on that day. But at the last minute, they did. I think they did a pay-per-view, and they pulled Ricky out. And we want Rock and Roll as the tag team, so we just didn't want one of them. So this year we're getting them back. It's been cleared, so the NWA is not having anything on that day. So Ricky and his partner there both coming in. Little story. So at the CACs in Vegas, they always do this, ticket raffle type thing. And this particular year was all about the Southern Memphis type of area, the Southern wrestling. And they all autographed this turnbuckle. So it was the Rock and Roll Express. It was Jerry the King Lawler. I'm trying to think of the NWA champion that we had in. His name is escaping me. But he signed it too. And they pulled my ticket. So I got this turnbuckle with all their autographs on it. And got to meet them. So it was kind of cool to see the Rock and Roll Express and get this item that I'll cherish.
All right, let's jump to January 10th, the first show coming back next month. It is, next month. And a couple more names. Danny Dollar is coming in to wrestle.
Yeah. Danny Dollar's coming in, and they're thinking about putting him in the title range too, because he had a standing feud with Kowalski. And he actually bested Kowalski in that feud. Whew, if I can talk. So it looks like I might have some competition. Not saying that I'll be wrestling Danny, probably in the future, because I would like to climb that ladder back to get my title back. And so as much as I like Danny Dollar, he's a very great guy. I might have to go through Danny Dollar to get my shot back. So.
Or how about Steve Michaels? He's coming in too. Get a bear hug from him.
So Steve Michaels, a very big guy, and I've done my research on him too, because I was told that he might be a future opponent for me. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not saying I'm wrestling that night. I don't know for sure, but maybe down the road, because he's going to do a pretty decent stint with SICW. And he's a big guy. So, of course, when the big guy's on top, as Kowalski is, they're going to push other big guys to go against him. So me, Danny Dollar, Steve Michaels, so I'm sure he's going to be competition at some point or another. So I'll be watching out for a bear hug. The Chicago bear hug is, I think, was what they called it.
And of course, we talked about it before. You mentioned it before. Austin Muatalo coming back.
Yeah, and like we said, Bobby brought up last time that his head is not in the right space, as we like to call it. Kind of go on the dark side of things, but I guess it's working for him because he's got a lot of championships from a lot of other organizations. So. Unfortunately, I guess it's working for him, and we're bringing him back in because down deep, he is a great guy. He's just a young wrestler who's trying to carve out, anything he can, and I guess it's any way he can right now. So,
the last time I talked to Austin, I recommended, this was when he was just starting to go as a heel, that instead of the white fur coat, you need to start getting a black or a deep purple one. If he's going to transition, you need to go all the way.
Yeah, so I think we have a good match. I'm not booking the show, but I would say if Austin's coming back and if Brandon is available that day, I think that would be a great match to see. Two guys that are busting their ass. Yeah, yeah. But I think two guys that are busting their ass right now to make it, because Austin was just in New York. He was doing some extra work for WWE. So he's pushing it too, just as much as Brandon. I know we had our Christmas party Saturday, but Brandon and Joey didn't come because they were both working in OVW that night. So, they're still pushing things aside to do that grind. To get, yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, great.
All right. It's we're 30 minutes over.
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah.
Just
So,
you and I sitting here talking about just normal shit. We go longer.
yeah, yeah. One thing I do want to do a shout out to Bill Henson. We know him as one of our referees for SICW. He was watching some WWE stuff, and they were talking about times that referees have to get involved in the matches. And he posted it on my Facebook. He goes, "Hey man, check this out. 15 minutes and 43 seconds. You're on this clip." And I was like, "What?" So I was watching it, and they were talking about different wrestlers and how they had to, like Earl Hebner had to get into Triple H's face and actually punch him during a match. And then they got to the referee that did FanFest last year, who was an ex WWF guy or WWE ref, who refed our main match, which I was in it. I was defending the title, and he evidently got into it with another WWE wrestler, and so they were telling his story, but they used parts of my match to talk about how he's still out there doing it, being a ref. And they didn't shout out my name or anything, but it was a small clip of, I think I was just about to hit the guy with the lariat. And that was the clip that they just threw in their little thing there. So I don't know.
So
I don't
after
think it
all
was
this
our
shit,
footage, but it might have
I was
been a
gonna say
fan
all the
footage.
shit that goes back and forth between them and us, and then they're gonna hork my footage.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it was ours because the way it was set up, it looked like it had to be from a fan. So, and then again, could have been from one of the legends because a lot of the legends were out there in the crowd. And of course, we know that they have a lot of pull, so I don't know. I just think it was cool that they threw me into that little clip of
That's
footage
awesome,
for
but they
that
should have named
referee.
you.
Huh?
They should have named you. Should have give you credit.
Oh, I wish they would have, but I was happy to see my ugly mug on their video, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, another podcast in the bucket. Hope you guys enjoyed what we talked about tonight. It's something that I don't think you'd see. Sometimes I might pull a little something from another video I've seen or another podcast or some cool conversation that I heard. And I change it up, make it our own. But this was just something that I thought about when I heard the news that Blanchard came back, and how I heard other people arguing, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And, I'm saying give everyone a second chance. So sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. We'll just have to wait and see. But thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for subscribing. Please, we want some interaction with you guys, so let us know. And, we can chit chat back and forth and, see what you guys like. So definitely your views are up. The subscriber count is up. But I want some more interaction with the fans. So if you guys want to talk or leave a comment, we'll return the comment. So negative or good or negative, either way, I'm happy to do it. If there's something you feel that we need to change or something that you love, something you want us to bring back, like name the wrestler or name the gimmick or something like that. I think I might want to do one of those for next week anyway, just to bring it back, because it's been a few months since I did, a little name thing. And I'll announce we're going to do an update with Brandon Beretta next week. So he's going to jump on our podcast and let us know exactly what's been going on with him, because I know he's been working his tail off. Like I said, he was in OVW pretty much every Thursday now. You can check him out. And then he's been doing some dark matches on there. They don't really do pay-per-views, but they do a Saturday night show as well. So yeah, it'll be great to catch back up with him. I was hoping that he was going to be at the AEW show that was in St. Louis this week. But he, again, it was on a Thursday, so he was also back in OVW that night as well, doing their live broadcast, which, I can't complain. I know normally when AEW is around where he is, they always bring him in for security or extra work on TV. It's just that, he was doing a show as well that night. So bringing that up, AEW, like I said, I always go to AEW, even though I don't watch the product on TV as much as I should. And I will probably change that up and get more involved in it. But when it comes to ticket pricing, AEW is so much family friendly on their pricing. So it's a great show. They also do Ring of Honor before and after the show. So you get, a good 3 hours, 3.5 hours of wrestling. So it makes it for a good night. The only negative that I would have to say is they have all these stars there that are making millions, and they didn't have really any of the stars there that night. So to me, it was like watching the B show or the C show instead of, you got all these guys, the Young Bucks, you got Kenny Omega, you got, I know Brian is out, he's injured, but you got the Mercedes, that made millions of dollars coming in. But you got all these people that are stars, and none of them was really there that night. So it was like watching a B show. Still good wrestling. There's a lot of fuck ups in some of the matches. And they did have some local talent, some wrestlers from St. Louis. So I'll give a shout out to Tootie. Tootie was there. She wrestles for Dynamo Pro, and she wrestled for South Broadway. She even wrestled for SICW. She was there. She got a match out there. And I think she was actually one of the better matches that night. Sorry for fucking up your name, but she's even in my documentary whenever that comes out. I talked to that guy too, and he still says he's getting it out there, but we'll see.
He just needs to send it to me, and I'll get it out there. He's taking too damn long.
I know he says he's living in California. He's got a busy life, but it's been years since it played in any of the festivals and stuff. So I would love to be able to see it again. And he told me during that conversation that he's going to give me a copy of it so I can throw it on the podcast or whatever we want to do with it. It's just a matter of getting my hands on it, so. But enough about that. Thank you guys again for tuning in, and please share, comment, like, subscribe, and if you like what we're doing, tell your friends and get them to subscribe too. And we'll have more information about the tier system as we get some more stuff in the can that we can put out there that we feel that is worth your guys' help. Basically, that will be worth for you to spend the money on. So until we actually have content that we like, yes, people would love to pay to see this, and then we'll get it up and running and get that whole system going. But tune in, because we will soon have a shop attached to our YouTube channel. So we're going to come out with some Squared Ring podcast t-shirts if you guys are interested in purchasing those. So just kind of give you a heads up on that because that's going to be part of it. And then we got some other ideas of other wrestlers that we might help support and sell their merch as well. But for Nate, for Big Texan, appreciate you guys. And for the Squared Ring podcast, we'll see you next week. Have a good night.
See you next week.
See you, sir.
See you later.